to get us going. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Enzo Gutierrez. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to try and figure out the future for smarter buildings. Great to have you with us today. So in case you're wondering who we are listed on mondaylive.org. So head over there to find out what we're all about. And just to point out that views expressed here on this hour are personal and not of any company or organization. So keep that in mind. And let's make this interactive with questions and comments and other nice comments in on the Zoom chat. So let's make this interactive. And if you want anything on this slide deck, it's available on mondaylive.org. So this being June, we're just sort of continuing the commercializing the vision that we were doing last month in May. As far as the agenda, we'll have a normal news and trends chit chat. And then what we want to do today is we want to do a bit of a recap of Realcomm IBcon that happened last week. Quite a number of the people on the show here were in Savannah, and quite a few people in the audience are also in Savannah. So maybe we can even bring them on if they want to be on. And so looking forward to that. But before we get there, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Ken Sinclair. What's going on automatedbuildings.com, Ken?
Well, lots as always, but of course the big win last week was the you guys doing your shtick in Savannah. Well done. Kudos to you all. Watched the show in several flavors. I think you got your message out in a really good way. And of course, the other thing was the announcement by Linux that the official announcement of the connection to C4SB. So that's great that we've got that officially connected. We basically unleashed AI to try and summarize what you guys said, and I think it did a relatively good job of that. We've actually got a couple of flavors of the project. If you were listening to the first video, the sound kind of broke up in the end, but Chemo was able to. He had another simultaneous recording going on, and we've tagged that to the bottom of this article as well. So we've got a couple of takes on the same thing. We're getting a lot of interest, a lot of global interest in what you guys did there. You definitely, it may be the cannon shot that was heard around the world. I think a bit of that is happening. I think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to change. It is changing our industry, and it's changing the dialogue. And if we keep going down underneath the penguin, there is an open source summit in Denver. I think these are the kinds of events we're going to go to. And just before the show, Anto and I were talking about just that the feeling of going to an open source summit versus going to some of our events. There's this feeling of cooperation, people looking for pieces, people looking to collaborate, people trying to find big resources. And it's like a treasure hunt for us. And I think inside of there are big resources that we can use. And the biggest resource is people who know how to use those resources and bringing them into our industry. So I encourage you to go to these events. Kimon has done a great job of going to these events and reporting. Below that, there's the one in November in Atlanta. We're a media sponsor of that, so we're kind of changing our marketing to look more towards the open cloud, open source folks. Basically, Kimon's got this "Make It Real for Your Building." He wrote us an article on that, and he's just talking about the dialogue that is starting to evolve in the buildings. And that spills over to the graphic on the other side that says, "When buildings talk, the rise of social AI in our cities." There's a big thrust on cities to start using AI for everything from policing to fire protection to smart grid and obviously the buildings are players in that. And there's really a cry out for what it is we're doing to get some of this stuff ready. We've been kind of just standing there as isolated buildings, and I think those purple data lines are starting to be needed and required. Another movement that's going on is the Raspberry Pi folks are they're basically always supported Linux, and so that's their home base, and they're now getting connection to AI. AI is evolving to package itself into smaller packages and even appear on offline. I found that an interesting concept. And by taking a Raspberry Pi and loading up some Linux software and loading up some standalone AI that builds its own database, you can build a powerful AI agent that actually does something, doesn't just talk about things. It has I/O on it. It opens the door. So there's a whole hobby group that is building this stuff. In my mind, very much like what happened in the DDC industry as we started to evolve. And again, it took off like wildfire when we started having standards like BACnet that they could actually build on. And of course, BACnet can be loaded into the Raspberry Pi. So there's a whole movement there, and that's bringing to us young people who do not understand our industry, but understand Linux, understand AI, and what they're doing is they're learning from the edge backwards, is what I'm saying. And we have this situation that I'll jump down to the corner there, that where can I learn about building automation? The Algonquin College in Ontario has actually created a film to a video to film. Boy, there's a word from the past. Video that the folks can they're actually encouraged to go into building automation. And I'm thinking that that's an important piece because we haven't made that connection between what it is we do and why we talk funny to how that's going to relate to AI and to open systems. So that's interesting. And then we just posted an article just a few days ago since this graphic was created, and I was surprised at the interest on that. Do-it-yourself AI practical applications, and that's basically the session that was put on at AHR, and we had AI it's interesting to take AI and send AI to some of these sessions that have gone on and actually have it listen to all the words and then do a summary. It often draws out points I hadn't even seen, so I find that just tremendously interesting. Anyway, that's some of the stuff that's going on. Back to you, Anto.
Before you leave that slide, Anto, back to your Raspberry Pi and the do-it-yourself AI at the edge. If you're not familiar, AI at the edge is becoming a big deal. If you want to look at some really interesting companies and technologies, NVIDIA, for one, investing a lot of money in putting GPUs at the edge and looking to do AI at the edge. Intel has recently announced some stuff that they're doing from AI at the edge. Again, how do you beef up the dumb gateways that we use today, as is Qualcomm, another one too. So there's a lot of work going on in the commercial space, not just in the do-it-yourself space, of looking to see, can you move AI to the edge? Oh, thanks.
That particular post was well over 1,000, which normally our stuff is we run 200-300 mid 5, 6 is a good interest on something we post, but
yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff. Even video analytics at the edge using AI is the thing. And there's a post from Kim on just now, if you see that in the chat too, on some AI on the edge stuff. I've seen that too. Kind of cool.
Yeah, sort of okay, sort of moving on. Rick, do you want to just wrap up the Tiger team, just sort of the status of that and just what actually happened last week in Savannah from a perspective of the announcement in C4SB. Let's not get into the discussion about the conversations in Savannah because that'll be the main part of the hour. Just give us a news.
Sure. So the Semantic Tiger team, which we're going to talk about a bunch about, and we're going to hear from Gabe and others about some of the things that happened there. But 8 weeks worth of Fridays at a really awkward time in the afternoon turned out to be pretty darn productive in terms of getting all the a ton of the right people all together on to get close to the same page, almost to a page that we actually wrote up. But what we didn't get the complete document, I don't think, written up that we maybe hoped we'd have done by Savannah. But we did get far enough that all the different participants were able to do presentations in Savannah about their particular take on the work of the Tiger team. But the goal of the Tiger team was to get all the right people together and to see if there was agreement on the some fundamentals around some semantic data model, metadata, normalization. Not sure I get the words in the right order. And it turns out that's kind of what happened. I'll let some of the folks that are really doing the work get into the details, but really pleased with the way that the Tiger team came together and that we as C4SB could be a co-host of getting that done, bringing those people together. We're going to use that sort of approach to solve other technical issues in the industry, and I think that was a great exercise to have all these people come together. So we also talked about in Savannah, we announced, and there's a press release, and Ken just mentioned it, that the current work of the C4SB, the last 3 years worth of work, has now officially been moved, and we're now part of the Linux Foundation. So a little bit of changes in processes and changes in where the documentation happens, and a little bit of change in our logo. But so now we will be getting a little bit different level of attention maybe also. And the work that we've done in the past is going to set up sort of now targeting some new work going forward. And we kind of gave a little, some hints or got some feedback in Savannah about what the community would be interested in having C4SB Linux take on in terms of what would be really cool for us to do, like we did with the Tiger team. What else would be really cool to do? And we've got some ideas around what that'll be, but I'll save that.
Thank you. All right, the link board has. I probably need to update this. This has kind of gotten very boring, this page. Any other thoughts or news anybody has?
I've had just a tremendous response. I mean, I was just floored by the amount. I mean, AI was just all over the place, and it's just been overwhelming for us. Coming off with this Realcomm closed a 6-figure investment over the weekend. I mean, basically we're having getting so much traction and just interest in AI. Is like, how much stock do you have to available? And I'm like, man, as a CEO of a startup company, like I've never seen this much of a interest. So it's been spectacular. I mean, I think AI it's arrived, like it's here. So I'm very happy.
Cool, Keith, and congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So we're now in the main part of the show. Why don't you show us everybody your what you got in Savannah, your gifts from Savannah.
Yeah. We're very happy.
And tell us about it.
Feel to first we got most innovative best AI tech innovation for intelligent buildings. So for our chiller optimization, and then we kind of we're fortunate enough to our customer and R&D partner Kenny Seaton from Cal State University Dominguez Hills got most intelligent higher education. building. So that was a, great deal. We were very happy that Kenny was actually at the show with us and in our booth. And, he's been a fantastic partner of ours. We actually developed our AI at his campus over the last 5 years. So just really overwhelmed. I mean, a lot of things came together. We had pivoted at the end of last year to go on a pure partner program. So we're going 100% through partners, and typically it is very difficult to build up like an OEM channel. But we've only started this in December when I brought Danielle on board, and we just committed to no direct sales. We're gonna live or die, Cortez burning his ships, like we're going for the partners, and it's just been spectacular reception. And I just think that's just the tailwinds of just AI, the importance of AI that it means to our industry. So very, very happy and just grateful for to get the recognition that we've been working on this for a long time.
Congratulations again, Keith.
Thank you.
Jim, would you like to congratulate Fred, who's on the call here?
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and Fred's done a lot of great cybersecurity work in the industry. Look forward to a lot more, Fred. And sorry I stepped out of the room when you got it.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, and congratulations, Fred. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, that was pretty cool. We actually beat out Stanford, so that was the University of Compton. I mean, Dominguez Hills actually beat out Stanford. So
all right. All right. Let us move on. Commercializing the vision. We really want to talk about what happened at Realcomm. This is just a placeholder slide. I'm going to bring this down, and I'm actually going to bring on to the panel Gabe. Gabe was part of the Semantic Tiger team, so he was in Savannah and was part of the C4SB session. So I'm going to stop my share, and so how are we going to start? How are we going to have this conversation? Rick, do you want to start and just sort of frame things a little bit, and then?
Yeah, sure. So the Tiger team met for 8 weeks and 90 minutes each time. And one of the key things that came out was this agreement, I think, that ontologies and semantic data models are important. And Andrew Rogers kicked off our session with a 15-minute, pretty cool demonstration and a talk about how some of that can actually be played out. And Gabe was a key part of then the next portion of the presentation, where the exact details of some of the semantic models were described. But one of the key things that came from the Tiger team was that there is apparently a little bit of a debate as to whether semantics and ontologies are important and or needed to be able to help guide the industry forward as it becomes more of a digital enterprise or a digital industry. And so apparently there's a little bit of controversy around whether what the role is. And so that was a little bit of a focus of what happened on the Tiger team, is like getting kind of the story straight of what is the need for a semantic data model. And no better people than people like Andrew Rogers and Gabe Fierro to help explain some of those details. So is that a decent setup, or does somebody else want to add to some of that?
That's a great setup, because AI was an important thing, especially at Realcomm for last week. But I don't think we want to make it all about that, because there's lots of other things that sort of was discussed and was sort of was learned. So, but maybe that's sufficient to give the mic over to Gabe. And because what's great about Gabe is that you are an ontologist. This is what you do, right?
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I wouldn't describe myself as an ontologist first. I'm a computer scientist.
Right.
And so I really try to search for the right tool for the job. And when we started the development of the brick ontology back in 2015, ontology was the right move. And I still think it's the right move. But I don't know, how much level setting do we do here?
Abe and I had a great conversation. He sat next to me on the plane.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. And I whipped out my laptop and he's like, hey, what do you got there? And I'm like, oh, AI kind of thing for buildings. He's like, really? So we had a great conversation. I enjoyed our conversation, Gabe.
Yeah. And I think maybe the perspective on AI. So there was some post that was making its way around LinkedIn about a month ago called "Ontologies Are Dead," um, which I think started this off. Which I actually didn't agree with a whole lot was in that post. I didn't know if there was a whole lot of signal there. But there was a much more interesting post more recently from Steve Dawson Haggerty at Normal, um, which I think he called it "Why Ontologies Won't Work in Building Controls." Um, and a little bit of this is sort of the tilting at windmills. I think ontology is a four-letter word, and in some parts, I think a lot of people think of it as, oh, it's very complicated. And certainly as academics, I think we do ourselves no favors. And how do you get to be more known in academia? Is, oh, my idea is more complicated. My idea is harder to understand. Um, when in fact, I think the role that metadata serves and ontology serve is something that a lot of people would actually not find controversial at all, which is that at some point you have to know what's in your building, right? When you're signing a contract, you're not signing that contract based on the vibes of the contract. It's like, no, you got your point lists and your point schedules and your equipment schedules, and there's the submittal, and you know the line items of what you bought. And that stuff had better be somewhere inside the building, and it better be in the control network so I can actually go and talk to it. Um, and right now, there's just a lot of, I mean, in my limited experience, there's a lot of manual checking of, hey, does that point actually tagged the way that it is, or is it actually made available? Or um, at a previous institution, we had a problem where some big piece of equipment was bought and then it never got configured and never got plugged in, and the old one never got replaced. And so the before and after, you're like, where did the numbers come from this before and after, right? There was no demonstration that it actually delivered anything. And it turns out they never actually installed it. So I think to sort of summarize, and you have to cut me off because I'll quite easily I'll just talk for the whole hour. Um, that what ontologies do, and I think Steve Dawson Haggerty really has it right in his post, is that they need to be very specific in the value that they're delivering. And right now, or at least the element of this that I care a lot about, or where we're seeing a lot of value, is in the commissioning and configuring of controls in any sort of software. That if it's so many hundreds of dollars per point, I need to know what's that actually being used for, right? We have a lot of people who engineers who they've got another job that they have to get to, and for whatever reason, right, maybe things don't get hooked up the right way, or maybe a controller's not configured the way that it needs to be. And having a way that we can sort of be certain of like what is actually the inputs and outputs of any piece of software, and being able to anchor that to some common understanding that's not reliant upon, oh, did you get the latest spreadsheet with all the naming conventions in it? Um, Feels like the kind of thing that everyone should get behind. And I think the debate is like, where does that model stop? What's the boundary of that model as it relates to the rest of the building? Where does it make sense to ask for that model to be built, that ontology model of the building to be built? Who maintains that? Where does it live? I think there's a lot of these other gnarly questions around the operationalization of it that'll be very important to address.
So I'm going to pass it over to Anna.
Yeah.
For a different a different perspective.
I'm not sure if you guys are picking up that apparently my yard folks decided to come in and do the art just as we start to speak. But Gabe, good to meet you again. I'm kind of on the other camp, right? I am in the ontologies are dead camp. Now, just to be clear, for those of you who don't know me, you know, I was there when BACnet first, when I was with Honeywell, I was the BACnet guy for Honeywell back in the day in Schneider. I was also the LON guy, right, Tracy? You know, for a long time, I stumped for LON for many years. We started Obix guy. We did the Obix thing pre-Haystack, and then I was the Haystack guy. So, you know, ontologies has been a big part of what I've been doing, obviously, for a long time. And most recently, where I'm at, I think, yeah, my perspective is that you got to step back and think, well, why did we invent ontologies in the first place? And I think you had it right, Gabe, is that I need to know what I'm dealing with, right? I've got a building of stuff and I need to know what I'm dealing with. And the company that I'm with at the moment, we're, you know, one of the largest property managers. When you think about it, at the end of the day, all we do is manage assets. So you better have a good, if you're in the business of managing assets, you better have a good understanding of the assets that you've got, right? If I got 3 of them or 4 of them or 100 of them, and because that changes the management that I've got. But from my perspective, you know, ontologies came about because people needed to be in the loop. I, as a person, depending upon my role, my function, I needed to know how many thermostats I had, or how many chillers I had, or how many pumps I had, and I needed to understand where they are and all that sort of stuff. But in reality, we also had ontologies because, and if you guys remember, that when we had the BACnet wars and the LON wars and the haystack versus brick wars and the Google building model wars, you know, everyone was like, my ontology is better than your ontology, and type of challenges. You know, it was a function of, and we still have them today, what I would describe as our building whisperer or our subject matter expert, right? Anyone on this panel can walk into any system, right? I'll talk for Keith and Rick and Jim and Tracy and David and Steve and even Anto. Sorry, Anto, even Anto. Maybe even not. We can all walk into a building, fire up the BMS system and look at the stuff and go, okay, I get it. I could do a printout of that. I understand it. I understand the list. I understand the points. I understand the systems. I understand the connectivity. But it takes some special people, and a lot of people like us with a lot of gray hair who've been doing this for decades, you know, to be able to do that. And of course, ontologies was well, I need to get other people involved. I need to have other people. I need to be able to share that data with other people. And so I can't have them expect to see an AE point and understand it, or I can't expect them to see a Honeywell EBI point and expect them to understand it. So I'll normalize it. I'll give it some ontology so that I can put it on a piece of paper or in a database and send it to someone else. Go, oh, okay, I get it. You got X thermostats and you got this and you got that, and I get it. I don't have to do the magic shift. But then I go, and that's fine. I mean, that's kind of my perspective. That's what we always used to do, because I have to get people involved, right? But then I jump to the next piece, and this is where I get it from an AI. And we do a lot of AI, right, from what we do. So everything we do is all AI-centric these days. And then I go, well, do I really need ontologies if all I'm really doing is I'm asking someone, what do I have? What do I have in the building? What does it do? What's function? What data is it producing for me? Right, and ontologies help me get there. But today, I can get an AI engine to do exactly the same question without understanding the ontology in the first place. I can get a chat GPT to look at, or I can get a large language model on all the equipment that I've got and go, hey, tell me how many thermostats I've got. And more importantly, how many of those thermostats are related to the 4th floor? More important now, if you start to ask, what is it we're asking the systems? The first step is, what are the people asking? The second step becomes, well, what does another software application ask that secondary application of the stuff that I'm talking about? And today we know AI is getting to the point where they're inventing their own languages to talk to each other. And we've got plenty of use cases of that today, right? Where AIs, you unleash 2 AIs together, they will start telling you that your ontology as a human person is not very efficient. It's the most inefficient thing. I get it from that's what we do for humans, but from a machine perspective, not most efficient. In fact, I've invented a better way to talk to that machine and understand what it's got directly. To the point where it's scary, right? To the point where we don't even know what it is that they're talking, what language they're using between each other, that type of thing. So my perspective is, do I really need an ontology when I can unleash an AI engine onto the same stuff?
Well, I think AI is a great choice if you want to make a ton of money off service contracts.
Fair
Right.
enough. I get that.
I mean,
Yes.
sure, absolutely, right? But at the end of the day, right, two things need to be true. One is there's an assumption that the data you're feeding into that AI has some semblance of accuracy,
Mhm.
right? Garbage in, garbage out. So you need some representation of that building and the building systems that's going to contain enough detail that the AI can actually answer your question and do the
Okay.
task that you need to, right?
I'll come back to that. But yeah.
Right. The other thing you need is you need some human on the other end of that that's going to be able to double check all the output of that AI model. And then there's the third thing, which no one I talked to at IBcon Realcomm seemed to touch on at all, which was the externalities of actually using AI, of the dangers of centralizing the power in a small number of increasingly, aloof companies that are trying to engineer away. I mean, this industry's been worried about the silver tsunami for decades, right? There's studies that we do not have the workforce that's in the pipeline ready to take over the maintenance and modernization of digitized buildings, let alone all the additional complexity that has, right? So there's also this assumption that someone is on the hook where the bill stops, right? The buck stops with them. That's going to say, I'm okay with taking the output of that model and actually running it, right?
Yeah.
So what really happens is you've externalized the cost onto having better inputs and representations of the building, and also having enough people who have enough know-how to be able to double check that all that stuff was done correctly.
Okay. I'll go through it, but reverse order. So the first one is, to be honest, I think we are way past the tipping point as far as trying to decide there's going to be anybody's going to have any control over AI as from now and into the future. We're past that point, right? I know there's lots of people thinking about how we're going to legislate it or try to mechanize it or try to control it, and we've already had case studies of AI ignoring requests to turn itself off, right? So we're past that tipping point's come and gone. But coming back to your first point about understanding the quality of the data that I see. But again, I'll go back to my earlier point. As a subject matter expert, I can look at a Johnson's NAE system and I can determine everything that's single point in there, no matter how obscure it is. I've been doing this for so long, I could do that. It is not beyond the understanding that an AI can do a similar thing, right? But I don't need for it to change it into an ontology to do that. So that's the second. Let's go back to the other point. So to take that data that I see in a Johnson's NAE system and create a ontology from it, I've got two choices, right? I've got, let's say the ontology exists, brick, haystack, whatever. I've got two choices to do that mapping. I can bring in my subject matter expert, go here, sit down and do this. I can use the next version of that, which is the regex, right? Create as many regex scripts as you could possibly can over the years that you've been creating regexes to go through the list of stuff. Mm-hmm. Or what everybody's doing today is just use AI in the first place. So an AI engine to make that effective mapping between the Johnson's NAE and the ontology, everyone is going to large language models to do that translation today. Everybody, right? Nobody is sticking to the old regex, and that was just yesterday, right? We were still doing regex just literally yesterday, and nobody's doing that anymore. So everybody's doing the mapping. So you're already relying on an AI agent to map your NAE point to a brick ontology. So if you're relying on an AI agent to do that mapping to the ontology, why map it to an ontology in the first place? I could just literally ask it the question that I was going to ask it before you mapped it to the ontology in the first place. So we're already past the tipping point of using AI to do the mapping. That's already happening. Every single person mapped, Keith, me, everybody is doing AI generic, AI run mapping. So if I'm doing the mapping with an engine, why do I need the ontology? I could just ask it the question I was going to ask it in the first place.
That's precisely right. I mean, Gabe, you got a hint of that when we're at 15,000 feet looking at a real-time AHU model in Ireland, and you saw the IO. It was N1, N2, out 3, PARM 7, guard 4, goal 2. So it was completely generic. All that, to Anno's point, I've done years of regex and pattern matching heuristics. That's over now. We use our AI for everything. It's even a little IT agent in the box that completely configures all the IT settings. You literally, no quotes, is plug and play. You plug it in, it identifies the controller, maps everything, discovers, it does 100% autonomous setup. So we're well past there's no human intervention at all. Zero.
So yeah, I think so to
that
this
use
right,
case, yes,
using...
for that use case, not so much. But other use cases, of course. Yeah, but not for AI.
So I think using AI for mapping, 100%. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, right? But that's different than saying, I still think you need a debuggable, vettable representation of the building to actually have guaranteed answers to your questions. If all you have is an AI model in between your source data and you, then you really have no guarantees it will ever give you the correct answer. There are no guarantees, right? These things are stochastic parrots. And they already, depending on how much you want to pay, they already have a quite variable understanding of the actual building system, right? I think at some point, you need a representation that people can agree on, right? For the purposes of contracting, right? If I paid a company to go and install some sort of machine learning based air handling unit controller, right? Say as I go and hire Keith, right? And Keith says, well, I did the work, but you can't look at it. It's only inside the AI model. And the AI model, when I ask it, says, yeah, I did all the work. Yeah, of course. And then I look at my actual building and not my air handling units are not doing what I want them to do. And I say, well, can you go and fix that? You're like, well, we can try to convince the AI to do it. But unless there's some concrete thing that I can put on a machine and ask specific questions about, right? Then all you're doing is outsourcing the double checking of that technology to some other expert. The role of the ontology here, we're not saying, there's still a role for experts. I think the goal is that it's a shared representation that everyone has the same idea, everyone can agree on what's there and what isn't there. And if all you're doing is interfacing with that through an AI model, you have zero guarantees on the accuracy of that information. You cannot hold the AI accountable for the things it does or it does not do. And you really have no way of explaining why it's doing what it's doing. These models will output, here's what I'm doing. But as the work from the people at Anthropic, the academic work is showing that even the explanations emitted by these models do not actually match the operations they're doing within. And to me, I would never. AI is great for doing the integration. It's great for automating a lot of these tasks that required a lot of know-how and a lot of sort of gut checks, and it's great for that. But at the point where I'm signing a contract of what's going to be delivered to me, or the point where I want to know exactly how many of my VAV boxes have a fault detection rule on it, I want proof. I don't want a statistical approximation of truth that I'm paying $20 a month or $200 a month for the right to pay them nickels and cents to ask that question. I want to have a real answer. And
So
that's why you need some sort
you
of
know,
structured representation.
let me have a shot at this one, Keith, because and it's valid, and I get it. But to be honest, Gabe, what you're describing is, well, let's go another direction for a moment. Most people had that problem when ChatGPT first came out, right? I asked this question: how do I know? Give me the best airline route between here and Sydney, and at the best time for the best dollars. Now, it would come up with numbers, and the first thing people would do is question, well, what was the science behind this? What was the analysis? What was the analysis? Show me the algorithm. And we get this all the time. Show me the algo. Show me the algorithm. Well, I can't show you the algorithm. There is no algorithm to show you. It's an AI machine. But the difference was, of course, it was trained on many petabytes worth of data that was out there, right? So the volume of data that it's trained on is obviously significantly different to where we are with the volume of data that we've got for building systems. My perspective is that will change as we keep feeding these engines more and more data from these buildings. The more that we feed data from more buildings into these systems, you're going to get to the point where you're going to go like, I trust it now. Much like I trust that, yes, you gave me the optimal route from here to Sydney for the least dollars at the right time. Can you show me the algorithm you used? No. Can you show me the data that you used it on? Yeah, maybe. But I would do a spot check, right? I'll do okay, let me go spot check that, right? So, but it's starting to outperform what I don't have enough in my company. I don't have enough subject matter experts who can do that. The number of grey-haired folks I got, pretty thin. The number of grey-haired folks who've actually got specific domain expert in our space, even thinner. So I need to get scale, right? And I need data, and I need training, and I get that, right? And I think in the early days, yeah, there'll be a lot of questions, and there'll be a lot of follow-ups. But I do go back to my fundamentals. If you're going to use AI to do the mapping, then I'm only one step away from asking the AI, do I need to do the mapping to the ontology in the first place? Let me just ask the question directly. You worry about it at the back-end machine as to how you get there.
It's a little bit different because I think there's 3 different types of AI, right? We know there's predictive, generative, and prescriptive. And we're doing prescriptive AI. We're not trying to generate insights or data or pictures or text. We're generating outcomes. So we're directly, how do you know it's working? Because you save 50% on your central plant. That's how. You turn us off, your cost doubles. You turn us back on, it goes back down in half. Like that's what we're generating. So the moving the needle on actual outcomes from an ROI perspective is pretty straightforward. That's an M&V process at the end of it. That's what we adhere to IPMVP, option C, take your baseline, turn it on. If there's a change, that's great. Our stuff is good because, like I said, you can just turn it off. I always tell my customers, if you don't think it's working, turn it off for a week and see what happens.
Well, let me just expand on that, Keith, and I think you hit on a good point, and I think, Gabe, some of the comments you're making is valid in this context. The measure of that is M&V. And I would tell you, in our industry, and I've been doing this for decades, our M&V has been crap, right? Forget the earlier days, right? Forget all the stuff that we've done today with AI and stuff. But every company I get to interview about the technology that to do, and I did one this morning, and I asked the fundamental question, what's your M&V? You tell me you can do all this cool stuff, and you're going to save me X% in whatever it was that they were saving me in energy.
Avoid KW demand, right?
Or whatever.
Consumption.
Great. What's your M&V on that? How do you validate it? How do you baseline it? And we've been, as an industry, we've been fundamentally terrible at that exercise, right? Baselining is not easy, right? And then comparing your savings against that baseline, we all know is not trivial. Yeah, you didn't save the 10% energy that you promised. Well, hang on, dude, you turned on all the lights for the last 2 months, you did all these other things for the last 2 months. And to go back and post M&V something to say that, you know, you didn't achieve your results, we find is really hard and complicated and stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And we do a terrible job. And I think that's one of the things that's going to change with a lot of what they are. Exactly to your point. Exactly to your point about, can I trust the output of an AI, is weirdly enough forcing M&V, the thing that we should have been doing all along.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, it's the thing that is fundamentally forcing, because everyone's got the same fundamental question you've got. I have. When I look at the airfare from here to Sydney, I'm like, really? Can I trust that? I can't ask it for the algo. I can't ask it for the algorithms. I can't ask it for the data. But what I should ask it for is, how do I measure and verify that? Tell me how to measure and verify that. And again, weirdly enough, I think by going down this path that we're going, M&V, which is the thing we should have been doing all along, actually now has a significantly more focus. Back to Keith's point, he's got a simple M&V, turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, it's Moneyball for buildings, right? If he's a good hitter, why doesn't he hit good?
Yeah, there you go.
And we don't care about the ugly girlfriend and all that stuff. That's irrelevant, you know?
But you're 100% right, Gabe. To trust it, we need good M&V.
Yes.
And I think it's naturally going to come as a result, because the market will finally push us. You know, instead of going down, I can save 10%, 15%, 20%, 30%, and all these crazy numbers that everybody always throws out, right? I see 10 presentations. I go like, okay, so if I can do all your techs in one building, I'm going to make it
100%. You'll save
Yeah.
10%.
No, I'm going to give it back. You know.
So Anna, what's wrong with having an ontology just for this transition period?
Good point.
If I have AI and it can do all this stuff so inexpensively anyways, I mean, I could see, you know, because of my soapbox here as to how slow this industry moves, even if we impose AI on new construction or retrofits, a lot of this stuff is decades in the making. And we have, you know, this graying workforce, which is going to take decades to move on. So is ontology really a bad idea for that transition period?
No, 100%. I agree with it. That's actually a good point, Jim. And I'm very much in that camp, because I think it does talk to the how do you prove it situation as well, right? And I think the fact that people are doing mapping right now with AI is actually, for me, is actually a good outcome. Because if I see the automatic mapping happening and I look at the output from the ontology, it's really easy for me to see the confidence factor that it generates, right? Oh, wow, hang on, these 10% are totally missed, like totally screwed up. Well, that's a great M&V back on me of, is it doing its job? So I agree with you. I think the ontologies is still needed to do this step, but questioning how long that'll last.
So hi everybody, it's been a while. Sorry, I haven't been around much. Great to be on. I have a kind of open question to this august brain trust. I get that the industry's been bad at M&V historically, and I understand we're on the cusp of greatness with AI tools. To me, this M&V thing is crucial to this transition period, but also to how systems will be built from the ground up going forward. And what I'm wondering is, what is missing? If owners could do one thing to ensure M&V happens easily and well, and this is a building owner, right? Not the building whisperer. What's the thing they need to have and the data they need to be able to check the work and do this M&V against any AI tool, or just their building whisperer doing their own job? Where is money best spent to see a return in the next 2 decades before I, install a new chiller plant and have all the instrumentation I ever wanted? But what do I do between now and then?
And Pete Scanlon actually asked the same question in the chat there. If M&V is the thing that's going to be, and again, I'm going to stress that and I'm seeing it now. But building owners are already asking the question: if your thing is if you've got AI driving my thing, How do I know it's any good, right? And they're asking so what's the M&V question? So again, they're driving the question they should have asked 20 years
I
ago.
feel that Tracy is very qualified
Oh,
to
yeah.
answer this question, because Tracy, what have we been dealing with for the last? Tracy's on my board. We're partners. We've been working for 2 years in the most energy intensive space, fast food and QSR. And what's been our biggest problem, Tracy? The MNV, right?
Yep.
And
You
so
got your
what do
hand
we
up,
need?
Tracy.
What's the data we need?
Well, and I would come back to, what are you comparing and what are you basing M and V on? Does it come back to the ontology to begin
So
with?
is it having, sorry to cut across, is it having the baseline data to begin with, to then compare everything to, and to understand the tolerances within which things should be working? And if things are out of the range in a good way or out of the range in a bad way, is that what we're missing?
I think an aspect of this is having a representation, having your building data, right? And I think this has been our messaging with ASHRAE 223 coming out, is this like, whatever ontology you decide to go with, like the important thing is to digitize. The important thing is to digitize, and the important thing is to encourage whoever you are buying software, BMS, whoever you're buying it from, is to say, you need to be able to give me my data in a way that's not tied to your product. Because as soon as it's tied to that product and I need to maintain that license or pay an engineer to come in, and when I was in grad school, we were, man in the middling the old controllers from buildings because the company didn't exist anymore, or some big provider decides to turn off an old service for whatever reason, is we need data to exist independently of the products that are bought. If you don't have that, there's no hope of being able to have any sort of longitudinal understanding, right? And I can take that data and I can go and give it to a bunch of companies, right? And maybe those companies are using AI to develop the heuristic for M&V. Maybe they're using a bunch of old school expert system stuff. But if you don't have a representation of that data that you can download and take to another provider, then you are 100% reliant upon the goodwill of that company to the extent that it makes economic sense for them. And if you're not going to be buying a whole lot more controllers because you've got a thin budget for all the automation stuff, then good luck, right? And I think, to bring it back to the ontology, I think some of the stuff the ontology can do, right, is it's a representation that can be verified that has enough information in there that you can go and what applications you can support with that data, right? And this isn't, all of the big companies have their own way that they've been representing data, right? That's grown organically from their needs, from their engineers. They know how they want to organize data, and that's fine, right? We're not going to be able to really get rid of that. But I think you need the export, right? I need to be able to download not just the data. I want the structure of the network. I want, what's the equipment in there and how is that connected? And maybe we need something like the levels of detail like they have in IFC or BIM, right? To be able to know what sufficient amount of data do I need to go and take to another provider. So I'm maybe extrapolating a little bit, but I think you need to be able to get the data out.
I am
And you need to be able to
100% on board with you, Gabe, in that it should be transportable. But I'll tell you right now, I can get my AI engine to do that for me. I don't need a guide to do that. I can get the data, do the ontology mapping, and hand it on down the path. I've used no people to do that. And my business is very people centric, right?
I know if you just have data, you just have a whole set of numbers without any description of what those numbers are and some kind of semantic.
No. That's what I'm saying. I can get my engine to do that mapping, and if I need to export it, I could make it.
So it's all, what you're saying is it's always part of your data.
No, back to Jim's point. I think there's an interim point, right, where I'm still. If you wanted in an ontology, to Gabe's point, that I can send it to somebody else and go do something with it, my engine can give it to you like that. I don't need it per se for my uses, but if you want it in that, I can give it to you in that.
Can I need to ask a really dumb, maybe dumb question, but fundamental. Whether the ontology is predefined and utilized in that form, or you're relying on AI to provide all these same answers and references, which is effectively an ontology, but defined by the AI as opposed to predefined. Am I thinking of that right? I mean, even when we're talking about AI generated, there is still an ontology, right? The AI needs to know the difference between temperature and pressure and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So it understands that, it figures that out maybe on its own. It's not pre-fed that or predefined per se, but there's an ontology going on in either of these cases, or am I missing something?
I'll give you a fun exercise, and I do need to jump, sorry folks, in a minute, but I'll give you a fun exercise. Go take your favorite set of metadata from whatever favorite system you want. Go to ChatGPT, dump it in there, and ask it to create an ontology. Be a fun exercise for you. See what it does.
Just make sure you spell ontology correctly.
It'll spell it for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
But there is, I mean, ontology, when it comes back, am I missing something here? When it comes back to what we're talking about, even information spit out by AI, you're interpreting that through an ontology, whether that's inherent or predefined and written. There is an ontology going on. I think the debate might be just, do we use a predefined one, or do we let the AI figure it out? And
that's my point, Tracy. From my perspective, I can get the ontology to create it for me, right? I don't need an ontology. To Jim's point, the fact that there are ontologies, which makes it verifiable, so I can go back and verify what it's done. Sure, that's helpful. Absolutely.
according to AI says ontologies are important and required and needed for all those reasons I posted in there. That's a direct answer from AI, right? So it's kind of interesting that AI says that, yeah, we need that. It's much more efficient that way.
But do the exercise. It's kind of fun. Take your favorite metadata, dump it into ChatGPT, and ask it to create an ontology.
We got lots of spreadsheets we can dump in there to try that. That should be interesting.
It'll do it. The thing that the AI systems will not say, I don't know. And they won't say, I don't think that's the right way of doing it. An AI system will always go out of its way to make sure you get what you want, even if it's not accurate, up to date, or the best way of doing it. I think, you can always.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Generative and predictive, yes. Prescriptive, no.
Yeah, that's an important detail here that we're talking about, right? In a stochastic model, you expect different answers based on different inputs and so forth. In something that's based more on predictive modeling, you would expect the same result given the same inputs, right?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong about that?
Give or take. It depends on the model, but
our AI has no problem ostracizing 20 to 25% of a multi-thousand bit portfolio of thousands of RTUs. The answer is no. It can say no. It can go right around that stuff. If there's any sort of perfection, it goes right around it.
But you've taught it to do that. You programmed it to look for exceptions or lack of data or lack of required input in order to come to an answer that you want, right?
It's prescribed.
Yeah.
I prescribed a certain level of resolution and data quality and all that. It's a goal. So AI is all about setting goals. And so if my goal is 85% data sufficiency or 100% in some cases for a critical central plant, it adheres to that. So if you lose your sensor, imperfect, it just goes around, flags it, and says, I'll try it in the next 5 minutes to see if the humans fit.
Yeah, that's a different thing. Keith, let me ask you a question. If you got the same data over, in each time you get the same set of data, do you get the same output?
No, because we purposely have what's called a feature called variation injection, where we want to vary the outcome because we don't want the model to crash or think that it's arrived at the best solution. So we purposely introduce a disturbance on every cycle. So the answer is
Okay,
you never get the same result.
so we need to bring this to a wrap. This has been really great. Gabe, I hope you're not totally frustrated. I can see a little bit of frustration on your face, but
Don't be beat down, Gabe. Don't let him do it.
No. I'm good. I know I'm right. That's right.
the ontology says that you're right.
Well, I mean, I think it's telling that, the AI is probably pulling from a lot of my papers and blog posts and things that I've written. That's probably why it thinks ontology is the right thing.
You've been assimilated.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
so
see
I
if
think
it
we
is
had a
the same
really
way.
great conversation. So thank you again, Gabe, and we'll be back next week. And
Thank you.
maybe
All right.
Gabe will be
Yeah.
up for more punishment. Maybe not.
We'll see.
Bye, guys.
Thanks,
All
Gabe.
right.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.